I think I've been explaining how to brew coffees wrong to you this whole time. Now, if you guys didn't know, I'm actually a toxic League of Legends player. I've been playing for a little bit over 10 years. Well, since beta, actually. And I've come to the realization that brewing coffee is actually like playing an RPG game. Let me explain to you guys. As you guys can see, I've got myself a new mic. We're slowly upgrading the sets that we're going to be working with. I've got lights from last year. I've got myself my new camera. I've got a new laptop. And then because I'm always just talking and talking and talking in my videos, thanks for listening, by the way. I thought that the most important thing actually wasn't the laptop or the lens. It was actually the mic. We've had a lot of audio issues before, but hopefully this fixes it. So probably purchased myself a new mic. I've got a new stand. New year, new me, right? So let's get right into it. Yeah. I actually think that this thought process and mindset is relevant for all types of brewing and coffee. So whether it's espresso, pour over, siphons, AeroPress, or even French press, I think my thought process is going to be relevant regardless. So in a sense, coffee is like an RPG game. When we grind the coffee beans, we determine how many enemies we're facing and how much HP they actually have. I believe that each particle of coffee, that when we ground it, has a certain amount of HP. And what we want to do is actually make it so that the HP hits 0 perfectly. We don't want to do too much damage because then we get an over-extraction. But then there are some things that when we're brewing called gases. The carbon dioxide comes out. And the carbon dioxide, in my mind, is actually like a shield. And it prevents the water from actually extracting the good flavors, or for us to damage the HP. So if you guys can think of it in a certain way, the water does a certain amount of damage to the coffee beans. And when it fully damages the coffee beans kind of sink. It's like it's going through its burial process. As it sinks and when it hits the bottom, that's when it's fully damaged or fully extracted. And along the way, when we brew coffee, we have the gases, which ends up as a shield. So there are certain things we have to do to break the shield before we can actually get to the HP. Otherwise, we're whittling away the shield and the HP at the same time. We kind of want to break the shield first and then get down to the actual particles. So I hope this kind of opens up a different way of understanding how I see coffee. I actually think we are attacking a huge mob, and we want to kind of make sure they all hit 0 HP at the same time. And some have more HP, some have less HP. The ones that have more, they will end up in the middle. The ones that have less, we want them on the sides because they're affected by the water less. And then the weapon that we have is our water. Now we can change the water variables with a different type of minerals, or the temperature of it, or the way we pour. And that's the way we actually do damage to all the coffee particles. Now, water temperature, the higher it is, the faster the shields release. But the shield doesn't break because of temperature. The shield break because of movement. It's kind of like popping an air bubble or popping a beer foam or the beer top. You could technically scoop it away, or you could just move more to damage the shield. Now, if we damage the shield without all the beans rising up in time, then we actually don't extract evenly. So we kind of want to find a way to release all the shields, damage them at roughly the same time, and then we get to the coffee grounds underneath. Does that kind of make sense? I know it's kind of weird, but I actually think this is a very good way to put brewing coffee. So Some of the variables that affect it are obviously your grind size. I think grinding finer allows us to have more enemies, but all at the same HP. I know that there's an argument for consistency of grind size at a coarser side. The problem is you're still going to be left with the microfines, and so your deviation between your lowest HP and your highest HP particles will be quite a large variance. That is why I still think it is best to grind on the smaller side. That way, everybody's HP is relatively the same, even if, quote unquote, your consistency is not as equal, so the deviation is lower. So yeah, I tend to go finer. Now, as to how fine it is, we always look to find the grind size that isn't going to clog up our filter, and that's generally, for me, around the 350 microns. And the different types of beans, they release different amounts of gases, whether they're light or dark. After your first brew with them, you can find out a lot of information about that, and it just comes down to your technique afterwards and how you wield your sword, which is your water. So now I'm going to talk about how to control the water or your weapon to do the right amount of damage to your beans. Now, obviously, we can get super complicated and go into like the water molecular structure and like the minerals and whatever, but not for this video. Plus, I'm not so super good with that kind of stuff anyways. I just use whatever water I can get my hands on. In Vancouver or in BC, we have pretty good tap water here, so I actually use tap water. I used to use a very specific water, mineral content with reverse osmosis, but people were telling me they couldn't brew the same flavors out of it, so I got rid of the filter and kind of just use a normal Brita filter. So yeah, for a specialty coffee guy, I kind of use just pretty normal water. Now that that's out of the way, I think the easiest way to explain using your weapon is to, like I said, you want to damage all the particles at about roughly the same time. You want to hit them with the same amount of damage overall. So controlling the stream is quite important. I've had a change of heart recently. I know how I used to just set my grinds in different shapes, but after playing around with the switch and starting with water at the bottom, I actually believe that you could start with a very, very deep V regardless. This way you kind of get to the bottom and lift everything up. You will have some under-extracted variables at the beginning, but I have been finding a lot more success with this idea. And the other fun thing you can play around with is the water temperature. You can go higher or you can go lower. I know myself and many other YouTubers or coffee YouTubers will tell you the same thing. Darker coffees use lower water temperature and lighter coffees use higher water temperature. I've actually had a change of heart recently, and I've been thinking that darker coffees should use higher water temperature and lighter coffees should use lower water temperature. The reason being is lighter coffees actually have a smaller shield, and the lower water temperature does less damage overall. The higher water temperature does more damage, but darker coffees give off more shields or more gases. So when you're brewing with a higher water temperature, you actually need to use more of a sling motion when you're brewing against the darker coffees. This way you can get the shields out faster and then burst the bubbles earlier. But because darker coffees have more HP and higher water temperature does more damage, to brew within the same amount of time, you would need to use a higher water temperature to actually achieve that. Now, on the flip side, if you are brewing lighter coffees and they have less shields and less HP, you want to brew with a lower water temperature, because assuming you need to pour to the same amount of time, you need to be doing less damage over that same amount of time. So there's a lot of variables when we are brewing coffees that we have to think about. But at the end of the day, we need to hit the same amount of damage to all the particles, and the way we sling the stream and the way we control the water temperature determines how much damage we do. And earlier I had mentioned that when the grinds sink, that's when all the flavors stop extracting. So essentially what you need to do is you need to finish pouring when the last particle drops. And then you want to give it a quick stir, because stirring moves all the microfines to the edges. And I found a lot of success with this kind of thought process. So I want you guys to try thinking in this way, and hopefully you guys can brew a better cup of coffee. This is also, assuming the best flavors are equal extractions at whatever rate, and that higher temperatures and lower temperatures don't actually affect the flavor, and that the same amount of extraction is, or like there's a certain ideal extraction rate for each coffee. I know I sound like I'm rambling, but I think in my mind this is how it works, and I've been trying around with a lot of the different coffees I've had in my store. What I plan to do in some of the newer videos is I'm actually going to show how this thought process works with beans that aren't roasted by me, because a lot of times I'm showing you coffees that I am roasting myself, and even if I am first time roasting it, because I can see what temperature or I have certain expectation to it, it becomes a lot easier for me to hit that perfect brew even on the first try. I want to be able to show you guys with a new coffee what it would be like to try on a first brew with a brand new bag that I've never opened before. So if you guys have a favorite roaster that you guys want me to try, leave it in the comments. Let me know your favorite roasters and who I should try. I will do my best because I can only source them locally. I think shipping is a little bit ridiculous still in Canada. So I will do my best to source them locally and see if I can brew a brand new bag of coffee with you guys, and just show you guys how I would make the adjustments with this thought process. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you guys think about this thought process. Does coffee brewing make sense if we think of it in an RPG way? I think being able to use HPs and shields actually should help you guys see the coffee or see the brewing process that I see the same way. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this video. I know it's pretty quick, but I'll do another video for this week as well. So catch you guys in the next one. Bye.